Hello, everybody. Welcome to our forum tonight with Jackie Woods, who we are so grateful to for being here. She is the founder of the Pacific Trauma Treatment Center, a virtual private practice located in Pasadena, California. She used to live in be a South Pass parent and misses us all terribly. Jackie, in her practice, offers a unique therapeutic approach that integrates both Eastern and Western healthcare practices. Um, and she's doing this out of the goodness of our heart, but we did have a question in the last one. And yes, she does still take clients from where she's living now, from here. So just so y'all know, here's her contact information. We'll put that in the chat at the end again, too. So now I'm going to pass it over to Jackie. Thanks so much.
All right. Hi, everyone. My heart goes out to all of you who are going through this astounding tragedy over there. Pretty much everybody I know is being affected, and it's just so intense. So I'm just here to talk about some basic information. Would love to hear from all of you how you're doing and make this more of a conversation if you're comfortable with that. So I'd love to check in. We're going to go over I'd love to hear from you in terms of what level of impact you have suffered in this. There's all sorts of different levels, and we can have a discussion about that. We're going to look at resiliency and some tips for keeping it, and we're going to go over some common reactions to trauma and grief and loss, and talk about kids and a little bit and how they go through this and how to maybe get them to talk a little bit if it seems like they need to. Um, and I do have in the presentation some meditations and coping skills. We probably won't go into that unless somebody really wants to be led through a meditation. There's a really brief one that's great if you guys wanted that. And then there's some resources at the end that we'll look at. And I think Kristen or Heather are going to post the presentation maybe in the chat so you can access those resources. And I'm working on getting them up on my website. It'll be probably another day or so. So, oops, I didn't note this. There's what I just said. Um, so here's kind of what I did for the different levels of impact. The first inner circle is the highest level. And those folks need the highest level of support right now. Probably they've lost their homes, or loved ones very close to them have. And then we move out from there to high impact, moderate impact, and minimal impact. And I think what's important to talk about there is that that really varies for everybody. You can have a very high impact from this disaster and not have lost your home. Um, and just depending on how these issues, particularly, the devastation to our natural life and our city, and all the people going through everything, how that impacts you. Another thing that really influences your level of impact is your past. So if you've had a lot of trauma in your life, and you didn't lose your home, your impact can still be pretty high. So as they say in the airline business, you have to kind of put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help anybody else. When we're going through a disaster like this, that's really hard to do. There's 100 things going on. It's really hard to slow down. It's really hard to stop and even squeeze in a few minutes, but it's so important, you know. So one thing that you can kind of do, it's simple, it's obvious, but a lot of times we don't do it, is to set an alarm on your phone a couple times a day and just take a few minutes, whether it's writing, whether it's going for a quick walk, anything you can do. There's some meditations that I offer in the presentation. Anything you can do to take a few minutes and just still yourself and breathe, because it's really hard to be there for your daughter, for your loved ones, for anybody when you're also stressed and going through so much, right? So self-care is really important. And here's just a really simplified list of some of the things that happen to us when we go through something like this. So, some people develop physical symptoms, muscle tension, headaches, fatigue, digestive issues, blood pressure goes up, you can feel dizzy. Um, and sometimes we tend to like think it's not stress related, but if you suddenly have some of this stuff happening, there's a strong likelihood that it's because of what you're going through and the stressors of it. Some of the emotional symptoms: shock, numbness, anxiety, sadness, irritability and anger, sometimes hopelessness and feeling overwhelmed, depending on your level of impact, would all be normal under these circumstances. Mental symptoms: concentration can get pretty wonky when we're overloaded. You can feel impulsive and not as in control as you normally are. And there might be some confusion or even a feeling of wanting to kind of dissociate from everything and just kind of, you know, not deal, because there's just so much to deal with. And some people go through spiritual symptoms as well, which would be having their heart shut down. If they're really impacted, it can feel too much. It can feel, so painful what's happening. And sometimes some people after traumas go through a loss of faith, or at least a questioning of faith, um, and having a hard time sometimes connecting to the deeper parts of themselves. So again, these symptoms would all be sort of no, honestly, most of them are normal reactions to trauma. They should be something that comes and hopefully resolves as time goes by. And then, of course, if they just didn't seem to be resolving, then that's when you would want to get help. Um, And it's important to note that some symptoms will be delayed for people who are really impacted. So sometimes you're in shock now, and a few weeks from now, a month from now, all of a sudden you notice that you're super fatigued or kind of anxious a lot or feeling kind of depressed. And it might not be obvious that it's from this, but there's, really strong evidence to show that sometimes weeks and months after we go through a trauma, that's when the first symptoms start to arise, because we kind of go into shock at first, right? Um, and there's a lot of overlap between some of these. So um, this is, hold on, I can't see the top of my slide. Wow. Grief and loss. Can you guys see that? I can't see that.
Yes.
And that's also likely to happen right after something like this, especially if yourself or loved ones have lost in a big way in this event. And that looks like disbelief, shock, numbness, sadness or depressed feelings. Again, anger, irritability, confusion, feeling like things don't make sense, overwhelm, um, hopelessness, helplessness, and even guilt. Guilt can be a really big part of this. People sometimes have a tendency to compare their situation to somebody else's, and they can feel bad or guilty. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. Well, I didn't lose as much. And, I really encourage everyone to not do that. Your feelings are your feelings, they're important. And, um, you know, you feel what you feel, and that's yours to deal with. So kind of have to give it to yourself so you can ground and get through things. So depression in kids and teens doesn't look so different, right, than it does in us. But it's important to note that for kids and teens, there can be um, more irritability and anger and behavioral acting out than sadness and depression. So that's what sadness and depression often looks like in kids and teens. Some kids are great at showing their more vulnerable feelings, but if you find that you have a kid and that kid is acting out, more irritable, angry, it's important that you think to yourself, they're depressed. They could be depressed from all of this, right? That it's not just them being a pain in the butt, teenager or whatever. It's really probably the effects of what's going on if you notice a change in this direction. And another thing that's really important that can change when teenagers get depressed, there's a lot of negative self-talk and drops in self-esteem that can happen. Feeling unworthy, worthless feelings. And these can be really hard to notice because they're usually not articulating them. They're keeping them inside. And so sometimes maybe a thought or a statement will pop out and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe they said that. Why'd they say that? And you want to kind of track and notice if suddenly your kiddo starts verbalizing that they don't like themselves as much, or just putting themselves down in some way, or maybe not taking care of themselves in the way that they did before. And anxiety, very similar, lots of overlap. Um, this can come out about, it can express itself in a lot of social anxiety for kids. So they may have a hard time um, doing normal stuff out in the world because the world feels scary. They may withdraw from friends. They may even withdraw to their room more and disconnect from the family. And that's something to look out for. They may have a hard time sleeping. Little kids might, and I mean, all ages. But, and one thing that's recommended is to loosen rules. If they want to sleep with the light on, if your kiddos want to sleep with you and have more contact, it's really recommended that you give it to them. Um, if you can, if you have the bandwidth to do that, because it can be very comforting. Look for changes in appetite and somatic symptoms. If your kid's suddenly getting a bunch of headaches or they're getting tummy aches or whatever, then that's a really strong indicator that they're stressed out. Does anybody have any concerns or any of your kids kind of going through some of this right now in response to what just happened? Has anybody noticed any anxiety or somatic symptoms or changes in appetite that you'd like to talk about? No?
Jackie, I was gonna say one of our kids can stress out about schoolwork anyways,
Right.
but lately it just seems like just this week has been like, I have to write 7 sentences. Only have 4 written, it's just
Yeah.
it doesn't quite match
Match.
what
Right.
it is. And so
Exactly.
we've been doing some talking about our superpower of empathy and how
Yep.
we have to figure out how to harness our superpower and take care of ourselves in it because
Yep.
it makes sense that we would be I, I taught him the word displacement. I don't know that he remembers it, but I think maybe you're taking it out on this, but
But I mean, that's exactly what it looks like. And that's why it can seem so subtle. And a lot of times, you're like, what's the big deal? It's just homework. You're fine. It's okay. But you're like, hold on a minute. This
mhm.
isn't, it seems a little bit over the top, a little bit more stressed out. And that's exactly what these symptoms look like. So as parents, you really want to look for, they're a little bit more edgy about their schoolwork. They're having a harder time getting up in the morning. They just seem like more kind of panicked or more worried. Um, and they may be talking about schoolwork, but displacement is a good word. I don't know that that was really about that assignment. It's like us, they get irritable and overwhelmed when there's a lot going on, right? All of us do.
I mean, I
And
may
they're-
have snapped at him for no good reason 10 minutes before, so.
So yeah, I mean, it's just so hard on everybody. It's a really intense time. And it's hard to track these things too in our kiddos. So you just gotta keep a close eye. That being said, I do want to say that if your kids seem to be doing okay and they're happy, let them be okay. We don't need to force them to be overly empathic about this. Um, in our eyes, we don't need to make sure that they're going to say the right thing to their friends. Um, Kids have an amazing ability to be more present than us. And so if they're just having a good time and they're doing their thing, that's great. More, right? They're lucky, and we're lucky if they can do that through this. Um, it's recommended that you stick to routines as much as possible, kind of like what you were saying, Karen, how your daughter felt better when she got home and she could just do her normal stuff. That makes perfect sense. Having meals together and at the same time that you've always had them, or whatever, running your household the way you always have can bring a lot of relief. Playing some games together, trying to keep things relaxed, trying to limit their exposure to the news, and probably that's good advice for all of us. That stuff is hard to listen to, and maybe our capacity for it is greater, but for kids, hearing all the hard stuff over and over again can kind of seep into their little brains, so we want to limit that. Again, let them sleep in your room or have a nightlight on if they're having trouble sleeping. Another thing that kids really respond to um, is education. You know, they're just trying to fill in the blanks, and they want to know that everything's kind of okay, and they want to be able to picture things, and they don't have as much life experience behind them and as much education as we do. And so they may have a lot of gaps in their understanding about what's happening. And it's a really good idea if you can kind of fill in those gaps if possible. So, like for little kids who may not know this, even for, older kids, talking to them about what the firefighters are doing, what the volunteers are doing, what the shelters are doing right now, that like thousands of people are showing up to help everybody. These are really important facts to give to our children and to remind ourselves of, right? So that we don't get caught in only focusing on the incredible devastation that's happening. Um, there's lots of beauty happening as well. And it's hard to think about, but there really is beauty here. There's a lot of people, good people that are helping each other and reaching out and doing great things for the community. And so just telling those good stories to your kids and helping them understand the roles of some of the different people out there can help them feel more in control and feel like things are more positive and safer, and that can do a lot to alleviate anxiety for them and for us. So this is an exercise. One of my favorite parenting books is a book called Listen by Patty Whipfler. And she talks about all of us, but especially kids, having what she calls an emotional backpack. And as we go through life and go through things, every time we go through something hard, there's just like another little rock in that backpack. And pretty soon they get really heavy. And kids don't always know how to unload all of that. I mean, we have a hard time all the time, right? So, um, but so she developed this exercise that I think is just remarkable. Simple, but it really is incredible. It works. And what that looks like is that if you notice your kiddo is kind of having, I forget the term she put, but behavior that is off center, that is suddenly they're irritable, they're acting out, they're having, they're doing stuff that they shouldn't, they're just acting out. What she says is that that's usually happens like because their little backpacks are too full, and it's not just little kids, by the way, it's like all of us, right? And so this exercise, you spend maybe 15 at the minimum, maybe 45 max. It works best if it's 1-to-1. And what you do is you say, okay, we're just going to have sort of like a special time, for us to just hang out, and no devices for parents or for kids during this time. And you play a game, you get some frozen yogurt, you do some art, you just hang out. And what you want to try to do, something that's usually hard for me, is no questions, no teaching. You just sit there and you zip it and you're quiet and you just kind of stare at them. It feels sort of awkward sometimes, but you just stare at them. You just hang out. You don't say anything. You just make space. Um, if they're used to rushing around a lot, this might take a few times. But what happens is that when they really kind of notice that somebody's just like, they don't have anything to say, like the other person, and they're just holding space and they seem to be really attentive, kids will over time start to unload that backpack. For little kids, it can look really crazy. I did this with my son when he was like 3, and his babysitter was quitting because his nanny was quitting because she was moving. And this is like the other person that he was so bonded to. And and I was taking a course from this woman at the time and reading this book, and I just sat there with him and I didn't say anything. And he just started crying. He was on the floor, this whole tantrum, and he just just got so upset. He really unloaded all these feelings. And I just sat there and I was like, looks like you're having a really hard time, bud. I know you're really sad. Yep, sad, sad, sad. And he went through all these layers of feeling. And what you do is you just sort of call it as you see it. You look really mad. You're having a hard time. I can see that. And you just mirror it back without asking too many questions, if any, without getting them into their heads. You're just sort of mirroring back what you see. And what happens is they just start unloading. And in little kids, this can look pretty crazy sometimes. Like they really may tantrum and throw themselves on the floor and do all this stuff. And it's just them getting those emotions out. But what happens afterwards, if you can just hold that space, is that they get right back to center. They're happy, they're joyous, they just get right back to it. It's kind of miraculous. It's really amazing. They've gotten it all out of their system. and and you'll see their behavior they become absolutely delightful if you can get them to do this. So it's a really great thing, and it really is for any age. It's very helpful for our kids to do this. What else? Practice acceptance. Disasters like this, we don't have any control over them. They're really hard. Go easy on yourself. Allow for your feelings. You're going to have moments where you're irritable, you're sad, you're overwhelmed. You say something you wish you hadn't said. It's normal. Give yourself a break. Change the narrative, find the silver linings, kind of like what we were talking about before. Look at all the wonderful effort and care so many people are extending within the community, and be grateful for what you haven't lost if you can. And reach out, this is a good time to connect with others and give and receive social support. Sorry to keep picking on you, Karen, but it was great that you shared. You know, your ex right now is in the midst of just craziness, right? Not that you aren't too, but like just them trying to figure out, what are we doing? How are we finding a place? How do we file insurance paperwork? How do we apply for FEMA? It is, just completely overwhelming process. And so making a list and prioritizing tasks is a really important thing to do right now. If you don't do it, you're just gonna, because there's 1,000 things, right? And none of us can do 1,000 things at once. We have to find a way to go, okay, today I'm just gonna do 1 and 2, and then I'm gonna take a walk or a hot bath, like period, right? It's just, that's what you have to do. So try to make a list and prioritize tasks. If you're somebody who's less impacted and you want to help others, you still got to prioritize and make a list, because you can't do everything and you got your own life, right? So it applies to everybody. Please invest in some self-care, whatever that looks like to you. High impact needs, people who have been really impacted by this disaster really just need some basics. They need you to watch their kids for a few minutes. They need you to sit and help them write a list of what's been lost. They may need you to sit with them while they make that call to the insurance company and have a cup of tea with them while they're going through that. It's really simple. It's the simple kind of basic things. You may feel like, oh my God, I got to do so much for people. I don't know where to begin. It can really be simple. Letting two parents go out and just have like dinner, taking the kids and feeding them with yours, or, anything like that. And then for the people that want to extend themselves, it's okay if you don't have the bandwidth. It's okay that you have your own kids and a busy life. So if you do want to help people, let them know when you're available, and do it according to like what feels right for you and what works for you, so that it's not hurting you and you can really give full-heartedly and calmly and, in a grounded way. And, let them know what you got the bandwidth for and what day and time, kind of, and how you can be of help. And that way they can go, okay, I've got this person on Friday in the morning. Great. Right. And it makes it easier for everybody. This is a meditation. It's super simple. It's a metronome meditation, and you close your eyes and you take a couple deep breaths and you imagine the metronome going as quickly as you feel like you're going inside, which can be really fast if you're stressed. And what you do is you just take a deep breath and you make the metronome go cut in half in its tempo. And you take a few breaths and you just hang out there for a bit, and then you take another breath and you cut the tempo in half again. And this is just a really simple exercise for slowing yourself down internally. That's a nice one to do. This is another meditation. I won't go into it, but you can have access to it in the stuff that you'll be given. And I'm going to put it up on my website probably in the next day or so. And this is, I won't read all this, but this is a writing exercise from The Artist's Way. It's called The Morning Pages in that book, Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I've used it since I was like 23 years old. This exercise literally got me through college. And what it is you sit down, you connect with your feelings, and you just vent. You vent, you not think, you don't edit, you don't worry about what you're saying. You can sound like a complete insane person. Kristen, I think somebody's trying to get in. And and you just really don't edit. And you write till you feel kind of empty. And there's a real big difference between letting your emotions vent and being more cerebral and journaling. And this is an emotional body exercise. So you're venting and venting and venting. And what will happen is that deeper layers of feelings will come up and you'll sort of realize what's really bothering you by the time you kind of get into it. And it's just a really grounding exercise. And if you picture that we all have a cup inside, and when we're stressed, that cup just gets really full and it starts to overflow. This writing exercise has never failed to help me empty my cup at least by half, if not almost all the way. And all of a sudden I can concentrate and all of a sudden I can get tasks done because I dealt with all the internal stuff that was going on. So it's a really great exercise. I highly recommend it. And these are a few links to bilateral music. So I don't know if you guys have heard um, of bilateral uh, stimulation or music, but you use earbuds and you put one in each ear, and this music is written in a way, developed, produced in a way that it alternatingly stimulates, makes a certain sound in your right ear and then your left ear. And what it does is it stimulates in an alternating fashion both hemispheres of your brain. And this has an incredibly calming effect on the nervous system, on the emotions. If you're really stressed out, you can just put that in your ear. You can put it on really low so it's kind of background. And you can even go about your business, and it will really do a lot for just kind of calming you down. It's a really nice resource. It's all over YouTube, iCloud. You can find albums on iTunes. Um, but it's a really nice thing to use. Um, so listen, that's the book with the exercise of listening to the kids and helping them unload their backpacks. My practice is a virtual practice. It's still located in Pasadena, and I can be of service. There's also Psychology Today if you're looking for a therapist. You can plug in information according to zip code or specialty that you're looking for, and people in your city will come up, and you can search outside your city if you want as well. So those are a couple referrals. The Red Cross does a great job of coming into situations like this and helping, and these are the numbers for the Red Cross. They have a lot of people that they're trying to get to who have called in, thousands of people who are trying to volunteer. This disaster is going to be affecting everybody for weeks and months. It's going to be around for a while, so don't worry if you want to help and you haven't done anything yet. There's plenty of time, but you can call this number and get on a list, and there will be people contacting you, and you can help. Donate blood. You can, if you're a health professional, you can help in that capacity, or they will tell you where to bring supplies, or they will link you to shelters and different opportunities to just show up and help people in the community. So that's one thing to do. And this is a really great article I found on how to help people who have experienced a fire in their home. And this person who wrote this just, I thought, did a really wonderful job of outlining just all the really simple and very specific ways you can help somebody in that situation. So I highly recommend that article. Um, and that's what I have.
Jackie, thank you so much.
You're
Um,
welcome.
I think that last bit of what you said about how our community is going to be, it's days, months, years that we're going to be supporting
Yeah.
each other through this. And I just encourage anybody who found this information helpful we're going to send out a link and share that with people, but also reach out. I hope that we'll create some more opportunities for parents to just hold space with each other and, um, you know, help each other get through our highs and lows, because it'll take all of us moving forward.
Yeah. And if anybody, I'm happy to, this is a way that I can contribute. So if anybody wants me to talk to other people and stuff, I'm doing this on a volunteer basis. And if you have a group of friends or some people that have lost stuff and, you'd like a little Zoom together, my information's in here. You can contact me and I'd be happy to talk to people. So
Yeah, I put your information in the chat, and I also put that article in the chat, as well as I made a copy of the PowerPoint and put it in a place they can all access it as well.
thank you, Kristen. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being here, Jackie.
My pleasure.
It was Jackie and Heather that got together, and Jackie was like, "How can I help, Heather?" And Heather's like, "This would be great if you could do these." And so they
Yeah.
just rallied together, and I put a flyer together. That's all I did. So they were the ones who made this happen. So I just want to
It
thank
was
you for
great.
Yeah. Jackie and I
Thank
bonded
you.
over being therapists when our kids were in preschool. So
Yep.
we have a long history of nerding out, and
That's right.
and it's
Yep.
always when you called me, Jackie, I thought there's no better person to be present and help us to be present with each
Oh,
other.
thank you so much, Heather. So sweet. I really appreciate actually the opportunity. It's a way that I can feel connected to my
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
and offer something in this crazy time,
Mhm.
it's a little something. So
Yep.
anyway.
I appreciate it tremendously. Thank
Yep.
you.
You're
Thanks.
very welcome. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Yeah, thank you. Take care.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Peace, you
Yep.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.